Get out the throwaways. Dear parents of disabled children, do you regret having your child, Ren? Or are you happier with them in your life? I'm not a parent, but my second cousin, much older, in his 60s, and his wife have 4 daughters. Let's call the oldest Kay. Kay was born with very severe Down syndrome, diabetes and as a celiac. They said she had absolutely no chance of living past 5 years old. The father is a retired surgeon and the mother was a nurse. She gave up her job at 24 when Kay was born. She raised 3 other daughters, of which one was diabetic as well. She was also a huge problem child, out of control. Really, she gave up her life when Kay was born. She expected to be back at work within 10 years. Kay is 43 this year and still requires full-time care. She works at a factory that is specifically for Down syndrome people. She has to have her blood tested several times a day, which means that one of her parents has to drive for 30 minutes to check it, then 45 minutes home. She is dropped off and picked up by her parents every day she works. They have to measure every meal she eats with a measuring jug to check and ensure she maintains a healthy diet and get up 3 times a night to check her blood. As is usual with Down syndrome patients, the older she has gotten, the more difficult she is to deal with. I sat with her mother one night drinking wine, talking to her about it. After a few glasses, she broke down. She never got a chance to live her own life because of Kay. Not in their wildest dreams did they expect her to live as long as she had. The mother is a wonderful, kind woman. I've never seen someone with so much love. She looked at me and said I wish she'd just die already. Oh my, I feel so terribly for the mother. I have a special needs child with autism, 12 years old. We struggled in the beginning to cure him, but it's clear he'll always have the mind of a 2-year-old. I fear for his future. Right now he's just a child. However, eventually he'll be 20, and society will no longer see an innocent child. He'll be 30, then 40, then 60 barring any incidents that end his life earlier. I dread to think what his life will be like. I fear he will be treated like a worthless nuisance. For example, homeless, like a 30-year-old when he's 30, yet in many ways he'd just be a 2-year-old. I suspect when we die he'll have quite miserable life that this 2-year-old will never understand. It's like looking at severe storm clouds on the horizon, but you keep telling yourself they may not arrive, though you know they will. If I could get into my time ship, I would avoid having this child. Best for him, best for us. Perhaps not politically correct though. My son is severely autistic, roughly between when he was 2 and 4. I would consider driving the 2 of us off a bridge, or some variation of this, daily. I considered that he would be better off and so would I. What prevented me from doing this was thinking what the effect would be on his younger brother. Now, having said that, he started improving around the time he turned 4, and I don't have these thoughts anymore. He's still severely disabled. He will never be able to take care of himself. But the situation is now merely sad and inconvenient, not utterly hellish like it was then. It was the constant screaming, day and night. If you haven't experienced that kind of torture, you have no idea how bad it can be. As the father of 2 autistic children, I feel your pain. People who have normal kids have no way of relating. They have no idea. One day at a time. Not a parent, but currently living with my aunt and my autistic cousin. From what my aunt told me, it was very difficult for the first few years. My cousin refused to speak except in grunts and moans for ages, and when he finally began speaking he would just parrot back whatever you said to him. That is, did you have a nice day at school? Nice day at school. She and my uncle spent a ton of money on all these therapists for him to go to, and they had about a decade where money was extremely tight. Like never going out to eat ever tight. And then one day when he was about 7 or 8, my aunt was driving him home one day and asked him, did you have a nice day at school like she always did? And he responded yes. Yes. We played duck duck goose, which was huge for my cousin because he'd never volunteered information before like that. And the shock of it drove her into tears because she realized then that he understood and that he'd be alright in his own way. Right now my cousin is 18 and has a job at the school. He won't be able to live on his own because he won't exercise or eat vegetables unless prompted and can't drive and would sit inside all day flipping channels if we let him among a host of other reasons. But out of all my cousins, he's the funniest one. Once you get over the fact that oh, right, He's autistic. You start getting a feel for how dang hilarious he is. Case in point, he's insanely strong. So we would ask him to help bring in groceries, and he would look at us, decide it was too much work, and claim number. Sorry, I can't help you. I'm disabled. Or when we were going to go for a walk through a park and it was sunny and about 85 degrees out. So I told him to bring a hat. He hates walking, so he'd grab the biggest, furriest Russian hat he could find. And when I said that hat wouldn't work, he'd grab a yarmulke, and on until he'd exhausted every possible option. But he'd have this sly, grinning smirk on his face each time he'd come back with a new hat. I guess my point is that, at least from my limited perspective, having a disabled child is a huge struggle both emotionally and financially, but it can be rewarding in ways you wouldn't even think. My sister-in-law is 20 years old, almost 21. She has severe autism, organic brain disease, and hears voices. All told, she has about the mental capacity of a 7-year-old on her meds, a newborn when off them. My in-laws made my wife promise that we wouldn't put her in a home if they pass before she does. I don't look forward to this. Me and my wife have 2 kids of our own to care for and don't have a lot of extra money. Plus they have 3 other kids, so I know we will be fighting for an equal share of whatever inheritance is left to try to offset the costs of her care. I'm ashamed to admit it, but there's a part of me that hopes she passes before her parents do. She's family, but life is difficult enough for us without adding a special needs adult to the mix. I work with disabled adults, 18 to 70, and I had the chance to talk to some of their parents, and over 80% of the people I talked to admitted, some of them in tears, that they would have aborted back then if they had known that their child was going to be handicapped disabled. Which is consistent with the actual abortion rate for Down syndrome. At least, it's over 95%. My older sister is severely autistic and right now cannot live alone, nor would she be able to just be thrown into a job. Family life often revolves around her, and my parents have expected me to be home to take her outside as much as possible. There is a lot of pressure for me to be the golden child like lots of the other siblings in this thread are. When I get older, I expect to have even more responsibility for her given to me as well. It's funny because nobody had ever asked me if I wanted to go to whatever arts and crafts thing with them, yet the teachers and event coordinators are always telling me what a great sister I am. Meanwhile, my parents, particularly my mother, is always angry with me because she doesn't think I do enough. I don't mind volunteering, and I did help out with some kids with Asperger's in high school, but there is so much blackmail and bitterness from my mother to entertain my sister all the time. There was a point at which I could not leave the house without asking if my sister wanted to go. Now, I have to take her out first before I can go out. A lot of stuff is more difficult because my mom uses a wheelchair and stays at home. She hasn't seen a single doctor about it for at least 30 years. She has difficulty walking, but she isn't completely helpless. She doesn't work, just stays at home and maintains the small apartment we live in. I'm not saying that's nothing, but on my days off I know that it's just a few hours of work a day. It's really frustrating that on weekdays I have to wait until my sister is out of school. Then my parents get angry at me for wanting to be out late on weekdays, even if I study for hours waiting for my sister to come home. I could go on and on. My family feels like it is torn apart and I want to escape it. I could go on about the way they manage money, and how my sister never really gets what she wants, just crummy substitutes. Oh, you want to go to Disneyland? Let's drive around for 3 hours in Anaheim and do nothing. I can't comprehend the frustration that she must constantly feel. At least I can go out on my own. You can downvote me or call me a brat or whatever, but shoot me if I ever have an autistic child and I make the same mistakes. I have a disabled brother who will always live with my parents. My mom told me once that she didn't regret having him for her sake, but that she had guilt because he would never be able to experience a normal life, go to college, get married, live on his own, drive a car. But they take great care of him and have created their own version of life and happiness. I'm in a similar situation. My brother is severely intellectually disabled. He's 20 and seems to, mentally speaking, be about 2 years old. He will always need someone to look after him. My mother is nearing retirement and my father passed away 5 years ago, and I currently help her look after him. She loves him, as do I, but we both think it's better if he had just never been born. I have a mental and physical ill child, 15 years old, who needs help the whole day. I have only one wish in my life. Please whoever, let me live one more day than my child. Not a parent, but I have a cousin who is raising a mentally disabled kid. I feel so freaking bad for her. She is not who she used to be. She has gained weight, doesn't have time to go out and have fun, has built up thousands of dollars of debt. She has become depressed and is taking meds for it. I would love to ask her this question, but looking at her face and body already lets me know that she is definitely not happier with her kid than her life. I've seen people like this after they've had a normal kid. Not a throwaway. I don't care. My aunt married a very nice man a few years ago that has a severely disabled son. I believe he is autistic. He likes to scream. I mean, all the time. It's impossible to ignore. 2 years later they are divorced. Guess why? As someone who's the sibling of a disabled person, I love my sister to death, and I'm glad she's here, but I resent the fact that when my parents die, I'm going to have to be the one who takes care of her. That's why I sort of treat her like she's my child sometimes, because I know one day, I'm going to have to be the one demanding her respect. I don't know how old you are, but I appreciate the maturity you show now in already thinking about her future. You might hate the thought, but the fact that you think about it already shows me that you care for her. I am glad she has you in her life. PSSH, I was the golden child in high school and am pretty successful, but my parents still love my learning disabled sister significantly more than me. I am learning disabled, and a little sister. My siblings always bugs me about being the favorite. I am sorry, and I do feel guilty, because I can see it too sometimes. To further this question, what do you do in this situation? Unless you're financially secure, how do you handle this? There is an above average your child will not grow up to be anything, and you're just putting your effort into keeping them alive and trying to even get them up to the standard of normal. I'm not saying that disabled people can't be functional members of society. My deaf sister is on a PhD scholarship, but there are a lot of disabled people who are mentally challenged, and becoming a janitor on minimum wage is a great achievement. Really, I guess my question is, how do you cope with giving up your life? I work in a social services department for disabled adults. Many of the disabled people I meet are into their 60s and still live with their parents. I'm all for equal rights, but in that I think carers' rights are lost a little bit. One lady I met the other day was recovering from a broken hip, an injury she got from when her mentally disabled daughter pushed her down the stairs. I couldn't deal with that. Plus, sometimes, you really have to question the quality of life some disabled people have. When I was a student I met a disabled person who couldn't communicate or mobilize in any way. She had to always be in a lying down position and on a ventilator. If you could choose, would you want to live your life that way? I sometimes feel awful for saying this, but kind of believe that we should embrace the notion of survival of the fittest where we have the choice to do so. My so and I have already said that if we ever have children and the prenatal testing shows disability, we wouldn't disregard abortion as an option. It's not pro-choice, it's abortion. Pro-choice means you support the right to make that choice. It's not a synonym for abortion. What about kids who turn out to be fuck-ups 30+ years old with a kid and no job, still living with their parents? I work with a guy that's about to retire, in his 60s, and is selling his prized possession car because he has 2 kids, with kids, who are both broke and jobless and wants to give them money, so they can continue to be lazy and jobless. He told me one time when talking about his son, "I guess he's just waiting me out. He'll get the house when I die." I'd probably rather have a disabled kid than a kid who ends up being a fuck up. Don't regret having him at all. He's a great kid and I feel fortunate to have him in my life. It can be exhausting, physically and emotionally demanding and occasionally rage-inducing, mostly due to the ignorance of others, but the rewards are more than worth it. When I was pregnant I often wondered how I would handle it if my baby were born with Down syndrome. I didn't obsess over it because, really, what are the chances of a young, healthy mother having a baby with problems? After a difficult labor, an emergency C-section, and a scary span of time while the baby was having trouble breathing, the doctor came into recovery and said, "I think your baby has Down syndrome." or something. I'm glad I was so drugged up at that point because I don't think it really hit me, and it was a fight for my daughter's life for the next 19 days. It turned out to be or something. She is 17 months old now, and even though we have seen dozens of doctors, no one has a name for her condition or syndrome. She has a muscle condition called hypotonia, which means her brain and her muscles don't communicate properly. She is blind. She has multiple bone abnormalities. She is developmentally delayed. She is beautiful. She is happy. She loves music. She's my world. Life is hard. We have therapy every day. We see lots of doctors. We are in debt. I do take antidepressants and I have gained weight. You don't go through something like this unscathed. It doesn't mean I don't love her. It doesn't mean I'm not happy I have her. When she smiles at me, I melt. When she calls out Una, her way of saying mama, my soul lights up. She's my everything. I'd give anything to make her well, but I'd never go back and choose not to have her. We used to have a family friend with a severely disabled daughter. I was too young when all of this happened to remember exactly what she had, but I know it was a degenerative condition which was pretty much getting worse and worse by the day. She had pretty much already developed an immunity to any painkillers they could give her as well. This meant that she was pretty much spending every day in pain and in a deteriorating condition. One day the father put her in the car, hooked the exhaust up to a tube running into the window. He sat next to the car with her and read to her until she died. Then he called the police and reported himself. Now he's in jail for life. I couldn't even type this without crying. My aunt Tess has raised a severely disabled daughter with multiple issues related from lack of oxygen at birth. 3 doctors told her that the child would not live to be 7. She's now 23 and is so severely handicapped that I have watched my aunt and uncle fight for every single thing they could get for her to help her with her limitations. But it is heartbreaking to realize that they have dedicated their whole lives to the care of they have another child who has stated to them that he will leave the house when he is old enough, as the level of stress and tension, and I'm assuming many other emotions, is too much for him to handle. On only one occasion, and I don't think my uncle realized I was there, have I heard him say the uncomfortable "I wish she had died." I am not judging them or anyone else. My feeling is, until you have been in their shoes and cared for someone 24/7 with all the stress that goes along with it, you don't know what their life is like. For all of you out there who take care of other people who need a little assistance or a lot of assistance, you are tremendous people, and I hope that you realize what you do is remarkable. God bless the caretakers and caregivers. I have a 9-year-old daughter who's classified as emotionally disturbed. I wouldn't have had children if I'd known it could be like this. It's extremely hard raising her. I'm definitely not happier. My husband and I are becoming more and more isolated because she's not fun to be around, and she causes big scenes when we try to take her out in public. She doesn't look disabled, so people just think she's a nasty spoiled kid, and it's extremely embarrassing. Strangers give us dirty looks when we take her out and she tantrums because we disturb their fun. They should be grateful that they're only inconvenienced for a short time. They get to go home to their happy little lives. We're stuck with this. She's not disabled enough to qualify for many of the services available to autistic or mentally disabled children either, so there's no respite. There's nothing typical about her behaviors, so even professionals don't know what to do for her. My husband only works part-time so he can care for her after school, and he often dreads her arrival home. I often dread coming home from work, and I only have to deal with her for 2 hours before bedtime. I really looked forward to having children. I knew it would be a lot of work, but I was in it for the rewards. I wanted little hugs and handprints to hang on the fridge. I wanted to be proud of her accomplishments and see her grow up and be successful. This is like all the hard parts, except even worse, and none of the rewards though, and I resent it. This will get buried, so not a throwaway. My husband and I both have a slew of physical and mental disabilities. We are both dyslexic, he by far worse than me, and both show some autistic tendencies. I have JRA, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. He has early onset arthritis, too late to be JRH, but still in his mid-20s. I have genes for breast cancer, and a family history of it, plus family history of dementia and massive systemic allergies and possibly lupus. I also have several possibly, but unknown if, genetic conditions, one of which carries the nickname the suicide disease because of the intense pain it causes. He has fibromyalgia and a family history of heart problems, as well as a family history of any number of other problems. And to be perfectly honest, with all this in mind, I never ever want children that are biologically ours. I cannot stand the thought of bringing a child into the world that might suffer one of these conditions, let alone any combination of them. And I am 100% sure that I would be unable to care for a healthy child under the age of 10, let alone one with any of the disabilities that may set in before that. There are enough older children in the world who need good homes. When I am financially secure, I'll adopt one, but I will never ever let my bad genes spread. I wish more people felt like you. It seems so selfish when carriers of these conditions have a 50/50 chance of passing on this genetic material, but they have more kids. My brother had type 3 osteogenesis imperfecta. He had over 400 bone fractures and required 24-hour care. When he died at 23 years old, my mom said, "I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat." One time we responded to a duplex fire. Most of the residents were already outside, but we were told that a few pets were still inside, as well as one couple's son. While grabbing the tick, just the mother came up to me and asked me if I did find her son, if I could pretend I didn't and leave him there while tearing up. I didn't know what to think of it, so I told her to just let me do my job. I later found out that her son was 33W Down syndrome. She actually got her wish due to smoke inhalation, but I never understood why she would want such a thing. Reading some of these posts, I think I'm starting to understand why. Step-parent of disabled girl. She is now 18, 9 when I met her. Poor kid has issues from her mother doing drugs when she was pregnant. My stepdaughter's mental maturity is of around an 8-year-old. She has trouble being able to understand what's imaginary and what's real. As an example, she truly believes that the Little Mermaid is a real thing. She also has trouble with time. Something could have happened years ago and she will talk about it like it just happened and feel like it just happened. She has been diagnosed with ADD, bipolar disorder, and being mentally delayed. I'll admit it can be hard at times, like when she ran away or made up lies about people, or when she gets into fights. But that's not every day or every moment. She is a funny, beautiful, sweet, artistic girl and much more. I love her like she is my own and do not regret having her in my life for a second. She has so many amazing qualities despite her disability. When topics like this come up, I often hear, "Oh, I love my disabled child sibling family member and wouldn't change a thing." I wouldn't ever wish he or she didn't exist to imply that people should not choose to abort in the case of severe disabilities. It bugs me, because loving someone who already exists is not incompatible with choosing not to create a brand new person with a terrible disability. My son was born with a fairly rare disability, basically the male version of Rett syndrome, but wasn't diagnosed until he was about 9 years old. We knew within his first few months that something wasn't right, missing milestones, poor head control. But the next few years were filled with so much uncertainty and frustration it's hard to put into words. I think that once I got past the initial shock and realized all of the "why did this happen to us" him was a spiral of destruction and selfishness, I was able to become the parent he needs, deserves. Since then I've lost a lot of weight, fat, strengthened my marriage that was strained, and focused my energy on productive and positive efforts. I'm even on the board of directors of a local children's charity so that I can give back to some of the wonderful agencies that have helped us along the way. This transformation didn't happen overnight, epiphany style, and things aren't a cakewalk now, but I know that evolution doesn't play favorites, so it's nothing personal. I love my son with all my heart and I'm thankful to him for teaching me what is truly important, even though he will never be able to tell me he loves me too. TLDR. Disabled son changed me from selfish fat to Robin Hood Batman. My daughter has albinism, nystagmus, and is legally blind. She is 13 months old. Without getting into the boring details, we were very surprised when she was diagnosed at 3 months. Though to be honest, when I first saw the head of white hair we both knew something was different. When she wasn't looking at us 2 months we really knew something was different. You go through a range of emotions, and at first it's very much a selfish experience. How will this affect me? What am I going to do? How am I going to tell people? Will I have another kid after this? You get over it. As for the regret, well, we have a 25% chance of having another child with all the same issues, and my wife is pregnant with our second, so I guess that answers your questions. May the odds be ever in your favor. I have been taking care of kids almost my whole life, babysitting my own siblings, and then being a nanny for other families. I can tell you that any natural drive or instinct to have kids of my own is completely gone now. I have been caring for disabled kids for a few years, dealing with their behavior on my own while parents are at work or getting a rare hour or two to themselves. It is extremely draining, and I honestly don't know how parents do it full time. It also tends to break up families. 2 of the families that I have worked for are divorced, and the poor moms have been left to not only work and support themselves, but then spend everything they have on meds, therapy, doctors, etc. I would not be surprised one bit if I found out that one of the moms in particular committed suicide. It's that intense. The risk is just too high for me to ever want to bring that into my life, or create a life that will have to suffer. Some people might say it's selfish, but I don't see the problem with just living your own life and finding joy in other things. Even normal kids are too much of a burden. To me anyway. I see parents all the time who can't have simple pleasures because they're tied down to kids. Maybe I'm just jaded because I've been taking care of other people's kids for so long, but that is the experience I've had with childcare. Not a throwaway, as I don't regret having them, but my son has osteogenesis imperfecta, as do I. It's quite a mild case, so there isn't a real big barrier to physical limitations. My wife's child has had mental problems his whole life, but really began the worst parts when we first got married back in 2001 when he was 3. From the ages of 3-12, he has been diagnosed with so many different disorders and medications, of which many were falsely diagnosed, only compounding the problem. Everything from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and ADHD, borderline personality disorder, etc. have all been diagnosed and attempted to be treated. This would have already made life extremely difficult, but last year we took him for testing through the Brains Institute and learned that many of these diagnoses were just wrong. From their diagnosis, he has regulatory disorder, sensory, ADD, ADHD, and some autistic tendencies. The reason we are quick to side with the assessment from last year is that it all makes sense of things that he's done all his life. Essentially, he is broken and will be for the remainder of his life. From the report, as far as being normal, our regret of this, we have many regrets regarding him, but none are of actually having him. Our regrets involve things that we did with him that, had we known what was really going on, could have been done differently. Medications that he's taken that may have made his condition worse is another big one. He's always been impulsive and violent, so we had no real choice in trying to find out what was wrong. But the new diagnosis being a fairly newly studied disorder would have been hard to detect with the help we have been able to afford, if found at all. Every day is a struggle, but we find the beautiful things in the simplicity of our lives that at the end of the day, they make it worthwhile. So many other things that could be added, but too long now. TL. Dr. One son has osteogenesis imperfecta, one has regulatory disorder and ADHD and mild autism. No regrets except things that could have been done differently to treat the situations. That and that I never cured boneritis. I think that if a kid is going to have a ruined life and also ruin everyone else's, there's no point in keeping a lost cause. If you believe in God, send it to heaven. If you don't, put us out of our misery and try again. Some things just aren't meant to survive. Evolution. I have had 2 of my guy friends break down and cry in the past year, saying they wish their kids were never born. One says he sometimes selfishly wishes his daughter would die in her sleep so he can be himself again. Their kids are healthy and normal. I feel kind of bad, but when you said get out the throwaways and I saw the rest of the title in the corner of my eye, I thought throwaways was some sort of euphemism for disabled children. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.